Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
My name's Tim Whitcomb. I'm an alcoholic. I'm grateful to be clean and sober today. I have to tell you, it made me a little nervous when I saw Kevin locking that door. You know, I've been in places with locked doors before, several of them, but then I realized, oh, I get it. He's heard me speak before, so what he's doing is locking you in, you know. Yeah, you're stuck with me. Thanks, Kevin, for asking me to come down and share. It's always an honor and a privilege to be asked to participate in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in any capacity. Thank you, Howard, for riding shotgun and getting me lost. You know, I get asked to do this often enough that it doesn't come as a great surprise to me anymore, but I still do always take a moment to reflect after I hang up the phone from receiving an invitation that I can't remember one jail, one penitentiary, one nut house that I was ever in where anybody ever said to me, "Hey Tim, how about getting up and giving us about 40 minutes of talk?" You know. I used to do it occasionally, you know, if the meds were right, but nobody was asking for it, believe me. It's a small world we live in, you know. I was talking to Rick at the break, and we finally figured out where we knew each other from, and I realized why we didn't know right away. We both used to be a lot skinnier, didn't we? Yeah. My home group is men who have lost their legs. We meet in Santa Barbara on Thursday nights, and any of the men in this room would be welcome to attend that meeting. We meet at the Veterans Memorial Center at 8 o'clock. My sponsor is a guy named Rick Mohan. Rick's sober 44 years and has what I want, which is 44 years. But today, standing here, by God's truly amazing grace and because the program of Alcoholics Anonymous works for a guy like me, I'm sober since January the 3rd, 1983, so I'm grateful for that. That's a little over 21 years. I'm 59 years old. I'm married. I know all the women out there were wondering, you know. Listen, I'm the one telling the story, you know. So, I see at least one of them back there going, "Oh, no way." Long before I ever took a drink of alcohol, somewhere in the 1950s, on the schoolyard at Cohasset Street Elementary School in Van Nuys, California, I'm out there with my little crew. One of them says, "Hey, try this. Squat down, take a bunch of deep breaths, stand up and blow on your thumb." And I said, "Why? What's going to happen?" He said, "Just try it. You'll find out." This was to establish a pattern in my life, this whole "just try it, you'll find out" thing. But I squatted down, I took a bunch of deep breaths, I stood up, I blew on my thumb, and I passed out. Because that's what you do when you do that. That's what happens. I came to, I'm laying on the schoolyard, the world's spinning, I'm all flushed and kind of warm and disoriented, and I went, "Wow, cool." Yeah. Everybody else in the group did it. Then they all ran off to play kickball. Well, I stayed there and did it 8 or 10 more times. You know, if it's worth doing, let's do it. I was born in Santa Monica, California. I should probably mention that. So this is my old stomping grounds down this way. I left here at the age of 7, moved over to the valley. Or I was taken. Yeah, you know, I wasn't doing too much on my own in those days, but so in November of 1982, I was living on the streets in Sacramento, California, homeless. I'd been out there for a while. I was begging for money and doing petty thievery when I wasn't too drunk. But mostly I was too drunk, so I would stand in front of Tower Books at 15th and Broadway with my hand out going, "Hey, can you help me out a little bit? Can you help me out?" And I took an inventory, I guess you'd say. I looked at myself and I thought, you know, geez, I didn't mean to end up here. And, you know, what I've had, if you had asked me at that point in time, what I would have told you was that I'd had a series of bad breaks and unfortunate circumstances and people that didn't understand. That was the problem. I was asking Jody for the pamphlet, Member's Eye View of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love that pamphlet. And I think it's the best thing that World Services puts out. It's just my opinion. But in that pamphlet, and the thing that I've been kind of stuck on lately, I get stuck on things. So for the last 4 or 5 months, I've been stuck on, there's something in that pamphlet that says, on any given day in Alcoholics Anonymous, you can find someone who, with all good intention, will absolutely agree with you about what you've already decided to do. And on the same day in Alcoholics Anonymous, you can find someone who will, with all good intention, absolutely disagree with you about what you've already decided to do. The important point being, you've already decided to do it anyway. If anybody here sponsors people, they know that riff. You know, it's like, so the point is that ultimately, if we stay sober long enough, we're forced to become responsible for ourselves and our own actions. I was never responsible for my own self and my actions. I'd had a series of bad breaks and unfortunate circumstances and people that didn't understand. That was the problem. And if you had my problems, you'd drink too. So I approached the last friend of mine who was still talking to me. We're back in November of '82. And she talked her mother into giving me a little half-a-day job. It was made-up work. I swept her garage, I moved some boxes around. It was all just, it was make-believe, really. I wasn't, you know, I was about half drunk. She gave me $20. And I spent half of it on wine and the other half on a bus ticket, and I went home to my mom. I was 38 years old. And I arrived at my mother's drunk as I had many times before. And when she answered the door, I said to her, with all of the arrogance of the practicing alcoholic, "Don't worry about anything, Mom. I'm here to take care of you." And Mom, bless her heart, said, "I'm sorry, son. You're dying. You're killing yourself. I can't stand to watch it. And if you're going to do it, you're going to do it somewhere else. It just hurts me too much." And she gave me $20. And I spent half of it on a bus ticket and half of it on wine. And I went back to Sacramento. And I crawled up under that freeway bridge where I'd been sleeping. And I laid my bedroll out there on that shelf. And I laid down to think things over. Man, another in a long series of bad breaks, unfortunate circumstances, and now even Mom doesn't understand. The other thing I remember about that night was I was as close as I knew how to being happy. I was as close as I knew how to feeling okay And I was feeling okay because right next to me there were 2 full fifths. And I knew that this night I was not going to come to at 3 going, whoa, where am I? What happened? What have I got? I wonder what time it is. And I didn't have a watch. I don't know why I always do that. I didn't have a watch. Wonder what time it is, how long it's going to be before I stand any chance at all of getting a drink. This night I was going to come to if I did, and there was going to be those 2 full ones right there. And that's what it had come down to for me. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous and they said, we live it 1 day at a time, I understood something about that. I was living it 1 drink at a time. I was tramping around with a guy named Bob the wino, Tim the wino. But, we were drunk somewhere, and Bob looked at me and said, you know we're dying? You know that? It's like, yeah. I didn't care. I mean, he said it, I went, yeah. You know, I was. I was malnourished. I was suffering from all of the effects of chronic alcoholism. I had hepatitis C. You know, I'd given up on solid food. I was malnourished. I had pleurisy. I was dying. The problem was it was taking too long. If someone had said to me at that point in my life, you take 1 more drink, you're going to die, I would have said, pour it out, make it a double. You know, I'm not afraid to die. I just can't stand living like this anymore. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous and I heard them read the words pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, ooh, how did they know? They nailed me. How did they know? How did you guys know about that? Bob said, I'll tell you what, man. I got a little money at the first of the month. Why don't we go to Santa Barbara and get sober? And I said, sure. You know, now old Bob could have said, why don't we go to Denver and get drunk? And I would have said, sure. I had focused in on the fact he got a little money at the first of the month. You know, that's really what caught my attention. But he was a man of his word, and the first of the month came, and we got on a bus, and we traveled from Sacramento to Santa Barbara. We were drunk on the trip, and we were drunk in that town for a couple of days. Bob had been there some years before, and he was looking around for places that he remembered, and they were all out of existence. He couldn't find them, and he's on the phone. He's getting answer, and he's, you know, and we're down at the beach, and we're both very drunk, and he's getting more and more excited. And, come on, we got it. I said, you know what, Bob, if I stand up right now, I'm going to fall down. So you go ahead. I'll catch up with you. I'll find you. And he went weaving down the street, and I just sat there. I didn't see him for 6 weeks. 6 weeks later when I saw him, I was 6 weeks sober. I was 6 weeks sober because Bob had said, when we get down there, we'll go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I went, okay, yeah, AA, I remember that. I used to go to those meetings when I was in the joint. Now, I didn't go because I was an alcoholic. I went because it got me out of my cell, because there was coffee, there was pastry sometime, there was free people that came in from outside. Some of them were women, real women, you know. I think some of you have been there, and so I went, yeah, AA, cool. I remember that. You know, I'd gone to those meetings in the joint. I'd been convicted of the crime of second-degree murder, a crime that I committed while under the influence of alcohol and narcotics. But I wasn't an alcoholic. I'd had a series of bad breaks and unfortunate circumstances and people who didn't understand. That was the problem. I was sentenced to 5 to life under the old indeterminate in the state of California. I had an A number, if that means anything to anybody. So it's been a while, yeah. One of the great joys of my life is that I've been out of prison so long, they let me go back in now. I have panels at the United States Penitentiary at Lompoc. I was there yesterday. I have a panel at CMC East in San Luis Obispo. I was there Friday before last. And that's the level 3 yard, mostly lifers, guys who did the exact same thing I did and are doing significantly more time than I had to do because times have changed. I came to the next morning behind a business somewhere in Santa Barbara. To this day, I have no idea where it is, where I was. All I remember is there was a guy pushing me with his foot, going, "Hey, you can't sleep here." And the story over time has evolved. This is the way I'd like to remember it. I threw back the covers and said, "I was doing a pretty good job until you started kicking me." Now, I might actually have said, because I had been drinking, you know. But I got up, grabbed my stuff, and I walked a block or two, and I found a place that looked safer, and I laid down there and passed back out. And I came to sometime later, and I got up, and I started to roll up my bedroll, and I had that thirst on me. You know, that thirst that, man, you need a drink worse than anything in the world. I did. And I got about half done with what I was doing, and I went, screw it, I'll come back and get it. I got to find me something to drink. And I had some money on me. It was Bob's money, but I had it. And I walked away, and I got a couple of blocks away, and I realized I didn't know where I'd just come from. I thought, oh, man. Another in a long series of bad breaks and unfortunate circumstances. I've lost my bedroll. It's the last thing I've got. Now it's me and the clothes I'm wearing, 2 sets, one inside the other. But I found a store and I got a bottle and I went down to the beach and I started drinking. And I thought, oh, you know, when I got the sick up off of me, got to feeling a little better, I thought, oh, Bob said AA. Well, there's a phone. The phone book. There it is, Alcoholics Anonymous. It's right there in the phone book. So I called. I said, "You seen Bob?" This very nice lady said, "No, I haven't seen your friend, honey, but how are you doing?" We talked for a very brief period of time. I hung up the phone, I went and got another bottle, went back and started drinking again. I remembered that I had seen the address when I had looked up the phone number, and I knew it was right straight up that State Street. And you can't get too lost in Santa Barbara if you're on State Street. So I thought, well, I'll walk up there, maybe Bob will be there, because I didn't know it was central office. I thought it was Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought it was the whole deal. I thought it was where everything happened. I didn't know about places like the Marina Center or church basements or, you know, rec rooms or whatever, places where we have them. I thought it was the deal. So, and it was in the 1200 block of State Street, so I started at 0 and, you know, I made the 12 blocks. I walked in and I met Gertrude. "Oh, you're that nice man looking for his friend." You know, the thing that impressed me the most about Gertrude was that she did not recoil when she saw me or smelled me. In fact, she even put her hand on me. "You know, I still haven't seen your friend, honey. But you know, I know some guys who would just love to talk to you." "How about if I make a call and I'll tell you how to get to where they are? It's real close." Sure. And I left central office on the way to this little club. Halfway there, I found a bar. And I walked in, and I had 3 drinks. I had 3 drinks because I had a sneaking suspicion I was on my way to get sober. You know, and you need some drinks in you if you're going to do something like that. So I walked up to the door of this club, and this guy said, "Are you Tim?" "I'm Dennis." "Man, you don't look too good." I thought, this Dennis is an observant guy, you know. We sat down and started talking. And he started telling me about living on the streets and eating out of dumpsters and begging for money for wine and doing thievery and being in jail and being in prison. And it's all stuff I was real familiar with. And I could tell that he was real familiar with it, because you can't fake that kind of information. The problem I was having was what I was hearing from him and the way he looked, because he was happy and bright-eyed and smiling and seemingly at ease with himself and his surroundings. And then he told me he'd been sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for this incredibly long period of time. I think it was 2 years. I'm like, wow, 2 entire years? Dude, you know. I talked to a number of people that night, and they were feeding me orange juice and honey, and they let me stay there. And I used to smoke, so I was smoking cigarettes, and they were making sure that my sugar was okay. And the next morning, and some of them talked to me and left me alone, talked to me, left me alone. Because I was beginning to have a lot of involuntary muscle movement. You know. So I laid there and shook and twitched and sweated. And the next morning, one of the guys I talked to, a guy named Dave, came back and he said, "Hey man, I'm going to an AA meeting. Thought maybe you'd like to go." Sure. And then he did an incredibly kind thing. He said, "You know, we've got a little time. Want to stop by my house and take a shower first?" I'm like, shower? Ooh. You know, I hadn't had one in months. Literally months. But it never bothered me, you know, when I was drunk. All of a sudden I was starting to realize I hadn't had one in months. You know. I was smelling it, and I was, you know, I think there were things crawling on me. It certainly felt that way. But he took me to his house, which surprised me also. It's kind of like Gertrude touching me and being nice to me. This guy took me to his home, and I hadn't been in anybody's home in a while. Not legally. And he let me use the shower. And when I got out, he had laid out a clean pair of socks for me. White gym socks. No, they weren't new. They were clean socks. And I'll remember till the day I die how it felt putting them on. The ones I'd been wearing were walking around by themselves, you know. They were greasy. Put those socks on. And later that day, we went to a meeting. And a guy at that meeting, 2 things happened. One was the guy said he had been sober for 25 years and then he drank. And he was back like brand new after having 25 years, which scared me. I thought, geez, maybe this thing doesn't work. And I talked to him afterwards, and he said, listen, he got real intense with me. He said, listen, he said, if you stick around, try to remember this. What I had was too many years and not enough days. Too many years, not enough days. It's one day at a time thing, one day at a time thing. Oh, okay. The other thing that happened was a guy named Roger looked across the table, locked eyes with me, and said, "Welcome to the newcomer. We're glad that you're here. You're welcome in this fellowship. You're not alone anymore. You don't ever have to drink again if you don't want to." I thought, whoa. He didn't know, I thought he didn't know who he was talking to, you know. But, you know those people that said that they were new here tonight? Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. We're glad that you're here. You're welcome in this fellowship. You're not alone anymore. You don't ever have to drink again if you don't want to. I now believe it because it's been my own experience. Dave, on the way back, he gave me a big book, and he told me a little bit about it. Basic text for our society. Big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I still have that book, that particular book. It's all bent up and cracked up and marked up, and I don't even use it anymore because I use the large print now, you know. But I've got that book, and it's on my bookshelf in a place of honor. And I tell you that story to say this. On that day, the socks meant more to me than the book did. It's important for me to remember that, always, that it's necessary to meet people at the point of their need. I've read that book hundreds and hundreds of times. I read it on a regular basis with a group of people these days because I enjoy getting that sort of feedback and action going. But on that day, the socks meant more to me. I checked into the Salvation Army, the ARC. I didn't know anything about it. Place looked like heaven. I was surprised they let me in. And in those days, the drill was that you were restricted for a week to your job assignment and the residence. After that, your free time was your own. So I did that week on restriction. And an amazing thing happened to me during that week. I started getting thirsty. And I started thinking, maybe I was a little too hasty about this whole alcoholism thing. Because I'm feeling better now. Food's staying down. I'm sleeping in a bed warm. And those people are so nice, I wouldn't want to mislead them about anything. The first night I had free, I hit the front door. I don't know what would have happened. I know what did happen. There was a liquor store there, and Fellowship Hall was 2.5 blocks away. When I walked out the front door, there was Dave. Hey man, I knew you were getting out. I'm going to a meeting, thought maybe you'd like to go with me. Sure. I don't remember much about the meeting except that it was full of good-looking people like you, smiling, happy people. I hated it, you know. They all knew each other. They all liked each other. They didn't like me. I could tell that right away. They didn't ask me to share. And I had read that entire book several times already because I couldn't sleep, you know. I didn't remember any of it, but I'd read it and I was, you know, ready to illuminate all of your lives with my knowledge. But I did something unusual. On the way back to the residence, I told Dave what I was thinking. I said, you know, I'm glad you were there because, I don't know, I've been having my doubts. And I don't want to get drunk. I don't want to live on the street anymore. I don't want to go back to where I came from. But I'm not certain I'm an alcoholic. And I was thinking maybe I should test it. And I'm just thinking like maybe I'd have a bottle of beer. Because beer's not really alcohol. You know, beer's like a breakfast beverage that you use to get ready for the day, you know. Don't want to hit anything too hard right off the bat, you know, so ease into things. And I'll tell you what Dave said to me. He said, Tim, it's not up to me to tell you whether you're an alcoholic or not. That's a decision you'll have to make for yourself. It's a decision we all have to make for ourselves. He said, the thing is, you've been around long enough already to know that if you are an alcoholic, for you to take that drink is a very dangerous thing. And then he said, and you know what? If you're not an alcoholic, you don't have to worry about it, because people who aren't alcoholic don't try and sit around and figure out whether they can drink or not. Huh. So let me think about that, Dave, you know, and I went back in the residence, and I woke up in the morning and I was an alcoholic again. I spent a lot of time in that first 30 and 60 and 90 days. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. I mean, a lot of stuff, you know, mind storms. The one thing I did right was I didn't take that first drink to find out. And the only requirement for living where I was living was a desire to stop drinking. And they had a breathalyzer at the desk to make sure the desire was in place at all times. You know. That helped a lot. That helped a lot. So, 6 weeks sober, I left chapel on Wednesday night. I didn't even stop and change my clothes. I was wearing my suit, you know, my Salvation Army suit, you know, but my suit, looking good. And I just hit the door and went right for the club because I knew there was going to be a meeting. I've been going to meetings every night. And on the weekends when I had free time, I was going to 4 meetings a day. And when I wasn't in a meeting, I was in the residence because I was afraid to be anyplace else. But I walked into the club, and there was Bob. He had a big cut on his head, and he was holding a bloody rag to it, and people were ministering to him the same way they had done to me. And I was like, Bob, brother, where have you been? Man, I looked all over for you. I'm so glad to see you. Geez, you know, we came to Santa Barbara to get sober. Bob, I'm sober. I've been going to these AA meetings, you know, and I'm living at the Sally, and you can live there. And man, hallelujah, brother. Where have you been? He said, I've been in jail 7 times since the last time I saw you. They're hard on a street drunk in this town. They keep picking me up. I said, well, you know, don't worry about it. It's okay now. We're going to be all right. And got him a place to stay that night. And the next morning he showed up at the center where I was living, and he's filled out the little piece of paper that starts the process. And he said, you know what, I got one quick thing. I'll be right back. I'll see you in a minute. And he walked out the door, and I haven't seen him from that day to this one because he changed his mind. When I talked to my sponsor about it, he said the man was an angel who appeared in your life and got you from where you were to where you needed to be. And I like to think of him in those terms. But I know that he knew about Alcoholics Anonymous. So when we have a moment of silence at the end of these meetings and we hold hands and we pray, that's who I'm praying for. I'm praying for Bob. A lot of other people now too, but always think about Bob. And I hope he got it somewhere down the line, because I know he knew. He just wasn't ready on that day. I worked for the Sally for 10 months. At 5 months sober, the resident supervisor got drunk. So they hired me onto staff to be the resident supervisor. Now, this is a case of the blind leading the blind, I gotta tell you. They had a bunch of rules. I wasn't really too concerned with any of them, except it was a sober house. It was a sober residence, and nobody in that place drank because it was for my own well-being. And I had the keys to everything. And I'd go downstairs at night and lock the door and go back to my room and think, well, I can't leave now, the door's locked. You know, I mean, I'm just fooling myself with stuff because I really wasn't capable of being in charge of anything, but I was in charge. I moved out when I was 10 months sober. Became the intake counselor so that I didn't have to live in anymore because I'd met her. And guess what? She'd go out with me. So guess what? I married her. You know? Boy, did I, never mind. When I was about a year and a half sober, I was getting increasingly unhappy, more and more unhappy with that job. By then I was running the warehouse for them, and I was beginning to feel like I wasn't appreciated and I was underpaid. But I had all this stuff going on, but I was afraid to leave, because what am I going to do? I'm an ex-con, I have no formal education, I have spotty job history at best. So I was afraid to leave, so finally my sponsor said, well, look, why don't you pray about the area of your employment? Give it to God and see what goes on. So I prayed, and 2 weeks later I was fired. It's hard to get fired from the Salvation Army, but I pulled it off. It scared me. I ran straight for my sponsor. He fired me. He said, well, what would you do if you had a choice? I said, I'd go to work at the university, but I've had an application out there for months, and I haven't even heard from them. He said, I know somebody out there. Let me make a call. He made the call. The next day I had a job interview. The day after that I went to work. I went, wow, this praying stuff really works good. I worked there for a year, and I figured out that it wasn't what I really wanted to do. And here's the change in me and the change in my growth and in my life, is that when I reached the decision that this wasn't what I wanted to do, I walked in and gave them notice. I will be leaving your employment in 2 weeks. Let me know what I can do to help in that period of time. You need me to train somebody. All those things. And I just saw it as great, tremendous growth on my part. I was like doing something adult. The other thing I was doing through that period of time was I had a sponsor, and he was taking me through the steps of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. The first 3 just sort of happened to me. I mean, when I approached this guy, here's what I told him. I got to figure it out now. I can't drink. My life becomes unmanageable when I drink. And when I drink, there's no guarantees about whether or not I can stop, when I'll stop, what's going to happen while I'm doing it. Powerless over alcohol. I got it. Life's unmanageable. Got it. Have come to believe that there is a power greater than myself capable of restoring me to sanity. It's rooms full of people like you. And it says that, I'm telling him, I think he already knew, but I said, it says that in the 12 and 12, that I can use this as my higher power. I can use Alcoholics Anonymous if I want to. So I've made a decision. I've turned my will and my life over to the care of Alcoholics Anonymous. But now, the next thing is that inventory. And I hear everybody talking about it, and I'm scared. Sounds like it's really a big deal. I'll be forever grateful for my sponsor, because he worked out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he showed me what Bill Wilson had to say in there about it's a straightforward business proposition. Take an inventory. And I read what Bill wrote about it. Any business that doesn't do this is going to have trouble. And is going, I'm paraphrasing here, but this is the way I understand what he wrote. As going human concerns, we need to do the same thing. We need to take stock of ourselves, see what we got going for us, what we got going against us. And when it was couched in those terms for me, I understood it, because for years I had been a warehouseman by trade. That's what I'd done. I know how to take inventory. You go down and you count. You make marks, and when you got stuff that's been sitting there too long, you get rid of it, so you get the stuff that's moving. You can bring some more of that and put it in that space. That's the way it was explained to me. I was going to be doing it as a human being, as a going concern. Tim, take stock. What do you got going for you? What do you got going against you? I sat down with him in the presence of God, and I shared that stuff with him. We invoked God into our conversation. I started telling him my stuff, and within a very short period of time, he went, oh yeah, me too, blah, 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 blah. And then we had that thing going where he was telling me some of his stuff, and I'm telling him my stuff. And I realized, again, I'm not alone. I'm not different. All that little, ooh, I can't tell anybody about that. I could tell you about killing somebody. I could tell you about being in the joint and doing incredible violence on other human beings. I could tell you about robbing people. What I didn't want to tell you about, what I didn't want to tell him about was the small stuff, the petty stuff, the kind of little chicken shit stuff, excuse me, but that stuff, that stuff that didn't make me look very good. But I told him, and I got free. I told him about my sexual behavior. I told him about the things I was afraid of. And I told him about the people I was holding resentment toward. Man, it frees me up. And you know what? If you haven't done that inventory yet, here was the main benefit for me of doing 4 and 5, was all of a sudden I felt like I belonged in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a member now. I can sit in the meeting and tell you, yeah, I took my inventory. I told my sponsor. He gave me my defects in character. He said, think of it this way. Think of it in these letters, PAL eggs. Just remember PAL eggs. Pride, anger, lust, envy, greed, gluttony, and sloth. So those are the things I want you to look at, because they play a big part in your life. He said, when you're done with those, you can go find some new defects in character. I'm still working on them. It's only been 21 years, so, I don't know, maybe someday. But pride, oh my God. Nothing to be proud of, and prideful nonetheless. And anger. Anger that used to be rage. Not anymore. I haven't been in a rage for years and years. I haven't done physical violence to another human being a long time. And I've quit a lot of the mental cruelty too, although I am married, so, Pow, pow. I'll tell you, Dave's going to send me a copy of the tape. I'll let her listen. She usually comes with me, God bless her. This is my current wife. So I went to work for a company after I quit the university, and I actually got hired through a temp agency. I told the temp agency, don't get me anything that lasts longer than a week, because I don't know what I want to do. But I could use a little money, so if you can find me something, little temp assignments. They sent me a number of places, and then they said, well, go to this place. And I went to this place, and I worked for a week, and it was kind of a weird place. It was different than any place I'd ever been before. And I was packing boxes in a warehouse, and it was just, there was a whole vibe there. And they said, can you stay another week? Sure. Can you stay another week? Sure. And I didn't realize it, but they were looking me over, and I was looking them over. And after a couple of months, they said, we want to take you and your wife out to dinner. And my supervisor, and her boss, who was the president of the corporation, they took us out to dinner. And we sat down, and I didn't know it, but they had been looking me over. And this was sort of like the final test, I think. And they said, what do you have to drink? I said, oh, nothing. Oh, don't you drink? Oh, not normally. I said, here's the problem. If I have a drink, then I'll be taking yours away from you. Maybe, or something. They went, huh? I said, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have 2.5 years sober. And the president of the corporation said, oh, great, I'm in Al-Anon. And the next day I was hired. And I worked for them for 12 years. And they were a great company, very progressive. and they were growing. I hit them just at the right time. They went from 300 stores to 1,000 stores. You know, and I was packing the stuff to send to all those stores for a while, and then I was telling people to pack the stuff, you know. And they very quickly, they called me shortly after I got hired and said, we're going on this deal we do every year somewhere in the country where all the managers from all the stores and all the partners and all the regionals and everybody gets together at one central location for a week. And we want you to go with us. And you can do this work, but also, since you're going to be with us, could you make sure some AA meetings go on while we're there? Because there's been a couple of people called us, a guy from Dubuque and a guy from, you know, I don't know, Cranberry Cove or somewhere, you know. And said that they're nervous about coming to this thing because they hear there's a lot of drinking, and there is some drinking, but we just wanted to make sure some AA meetings went on. It's like, sure, I'm going to take my crew with me. I go to meetings, no problem. They thought it was work. I thought, you know, well, you know, we have traditions in AA. I'm not sure you're going to understand this, but I can't let you do anything for us. We're not underwritten or affiliated or allied in any way with outside enterprise. So will you accept what I can collect in a basket as rent for the meeting place that you're going to provide for us so that I can stay within our traditions? And they said, yeah. I mean, they didn't get it. So, so we'd have the meeting. I'd get the $7 or $8, and I'd go and hand it to somebody for this $300 a night suite they got us stuck in, you know. But I kept it clean. And, they were great. They let me start. I worked at corporate headquarters, and they let me start a meeting there at corporate headquarters, and we used to have 8 to 10 people. We'd meet at lunch once a week. And there's a part in our book where in the chapter to the employer that talks about sometimes someone from a lower stratosphere, what's the word I'm using, status in life, can talk to somebody who's of a higher status without being threatening. So they called me in a few times to talk to the suits. You know, were having trouble with this guy over here, and he's not going to be scared of me because I'm just Warehouse Tim. And I can sit down with him and go, alcoholic, man, you know, sober guy now. Here was the deal, blah, 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 blah. So that was great. I ended up getting injured and having to lay out. I was out for a year, actually, with my back. And by the time I was ready, healed up enough, and been through all the doctors and therapies and stuff, things had changed down there. They were in the process of going public and new management teams. And, you know, at an earlier date, I could have just picked up the phone and said, hey, I'm ready. And they would have said, good, come on back. And it didn't happen that way. And I also knew I was done. There was part of me that, you know, like I've been there and I've done that. And I wanted to get scared because, you know, I'm an ex-con and I don't have a formal education. And, you know, I've got 12 years of history now, but I'm still, you know, what am I going to do? I'm getting older. And I couldn't get, for some reason, I couldn't get worried because, well, I know the reason. It's because I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because by that time, I had, I don't know, 15 or 17 years sober. And 15 years sober. And I knew I was going to be all right. I didn't know how, but I knew I was going to be all right. And shortly after that, the chairperson from Intergroup approached me and said, we need a new manager at central office. You think you'd like that job? It's like, yeah, you know, I'm an AA guy. I'd love that job. So that's what I do today. For the last 7 years, I've been managing the 23rd District Central Office of Alcoholics Anonymous in Santa Barbara. These days, I am Gertrude, you know. And I remembered the kindness that she showed me. And I try to pass that on. I get paid to work there, so I can't do 12-step work, but because we don't get paid for that. I manage the office. I buy the inventory. I keep the accounts. I coordinate a volunteer staff. I do a lot of that kind of stuff. But so I'll tell you a few stories, and then I'll shut up. H&I. If anybody here is doing H&I, if you're thinking about it, if you've done it in the past, thank you very much. I am a product of your efforts. I didn't even know I was hearing it at the time, but that's where the message was planted for me. The seed was planted inside the walls of a state prison. Going to those AA meetings for all the wrong reasons. Now, as I said, I get to go into prisons. I'm in a prison. I'm in CMC East up there on that level 3 yard with those lifers. And during the break in the middle of the thing, we get a chance to fellowship. So we're talking, and this guy comes up and he says, "Hey man, you ever see these chips, these sobriety chips? They got 30 and 60 and 90 days on them. Not the metal chips. We can't have those. We can't have metal. These are plastic. They look like a poker chip. You ever see those?" It's like, "Yeah, Donnie, I've seen them." "Well, you think you could find out where we could get some and how much they cost?" It's like, "Sure. But why, Donnie, you're 12 years sober. Why would you, what do you want with a 30-day chip?" "Oh, no, man, it's not for me." He said, "There's a whole cell block full of guys here who have alcoholism and problems other than alcoholism. They're bipolar and manic depressive and schizophrenic, and they won't let them out to come to this meeting. So what we've started doing is we're taking meetings into them because that's how we do our H&I work, man. And we want to take them some chips." So every once in a while when I go in on my panel, one of those guys has gotten better, and they've let him off, and he's come to our meeting, and they got their chip. "Hey man, look, got this. 90 days. Wow." I was there a couple of months ago, and a guy got up and he said the parole board had given him his date. He's been in 21 years. And he's sharing a cell with his 20-year-old son. He impregnated this woman, got busted for this murder, went up. 18 years, 19 years later, the kid shows up. They're sharing a cell together. He's got his parole date, and the governor takes it away. He said, man, he was really going through some changes behind it. They do that a lot now. Parole board says one thing. Anyway, I don't want to get off into politics here. It's just, but Paul says, man, I was really bummed. I went back to my cell and I hid out for a couple of days and I had a pretty bad attitude. And he said, and then all of a sudden it hit me. Do I really believe what I've been saying? Do I really believe the things I've learned? Do I really know that I have God in my life and that everything's going to be all right no matter where I am physically? Am I talking all this stuff just so I can sound good from podiums for you, or am I living it? What sort of example am I setting as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous for the other members of my group? I said, I turned to the people at the table I was with, the free people, my panel. I said, let's go home. We've heard everything we need to hear. You know, they don't need to hear anything from us tonight. We stayed, but it was just, it's incredible. So H&I work, it's not for everybody, but for those people who do it, it's a godsend. Jack Prose told me when we sat down together, Jack started H&I in Southern California. He said, Tim, people who do H&I work stay sober. People who do H&I work stay sober. He had 54 years at the time. I thought, I'm going to listen to this guy. So it's not for everybody. I go back to the Salvation Army every Wednesday night, where I used to live, that center. Have a commitment there. You know, if you're new, and if they say something at this meeting about commitments, get one. It's going to make you feel like you're part of this group. I've got a friend who says, if you want to learn how to walk on water in Alcoholics Anonymous, grab a mop, you know. Saw a guy walking on water back there a little while ago, you know. So I'm at the office one day, and the volunteer doesn't show up. It happens sometimes, so I'm alone. So the phone rings. I've got to take myself off the clock, at least mentally, because you know you can't get paid for doing what we do on those phones. So I take myself off the clock and I answer the phone, and a woman says, "I wonder if you could help me. I came to town yesterday with a friend of mine, and she got injured, and she's in Cottage Hospital, and she's still not ready to get out, and I can't leave her. And I had to spend last night in a motel, and I really can't afford motels, but I can't leave my friend, and I'm not in any danger of drinking. I'm 12 years sober, but I just need to talk to somebody. Do you think you could talk to me?" And I said, "Absolutely, I'd be happy to. However, the other line's ringing. Let me put you on hold. I'll get back to you as soon as I can." And I put her on hold. I picked up the second line, and a woman said, "Can you help me? I can't seem to stop drinking. I don't know what to do." And I connected line 1 to line 2. Because that's how it really does work the best. You know, they came by the office later that day, both of them, and they were both okay because they were thinking about each other. You know, they weren't thinking about their bad breaks and unfortunate circumstances and people that didn't understand. They were thinking about each other. You know, when I can think about you, I'm happier. I got a long way to go, but I'm working on it, and I appreciate it. Thanks for listening, guys.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out. in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.